In tonight's news edition, highways and major roads across the kingdom are reopened after being blocked by snow that caused traffic havoc and disruptions, and more snowfall is expected overnight. The foreign minister calls the fight against extremism a third world war and says Jordan would lead the Muslim Arab portion of the coalition that has formed to combat it. And intensive rounds of talks over Tehran's disputed nuclear program kicks off in Geneva today. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Highways and major roads across the kingdom were reopened after being blocked by snow that caused traffic havoc and disruptions. Snow blanketed much of the kingdom with accumulations of over half a meter in the worst hit areas in the north and south. Municipal crews labored throughout the day to keep the highway open, while army bulldozers and heavy snow sweeping equipment also joined in clearing the roads. This report has more on conditions in different parts of the kingdom.
In the capital, the Civil Defense and the Greater Amman municipality had their emergency response crews on maximum alert to provide rescue and other help to citizens. The blizzard had forced a brief closure of the Queen Alia International Airport, where some flights had been rescheduled as crews reopened runways blocked by snow. But it was business as usual at the airport late in the day. Power outages were reported in the north, where falling trees caused damage to the electricity grid. The northern Jarash and Ajloon highlands had the thickest layer of snow that blocked Thghret Asfour, the vital artery linking the north with the capital. The central governorate of Balqa also had its share of the snow blast, but all roads leading to the Jordan Valley are open. The southern governorates of Tafile, Karak and Ma'an were also blanketed by snow, and thick fog had severely reduced visibility. The Petra Region Authority has set up an emergency room to open roads and rescue stranded tourists, offering transportation to hundreds of tourists heading to Amman. Authorities in the northeastern Mafraq region had also put in place a contingency plan for the refugee camp of Za'atri, home to over 100,000 Syrians displaced by the Syrian civil war. The Civil Defense Department had asked the public to limit their movement, so not to delay service and emergency teams. Authorities also urged the public to heed heating and other safety instructions. Residents in low-lying areas were strongly urged to take extra precautions due to flash floods. Loy Balkar for the news at 10.
Aid bodies and security agencies providing relief to Syrian refugees in Jordan stepped up their efforts as the kingdom was hit by a polar front. The vice director of the Za'atri camp, which hosts some 100,000 Syrians, said additional shelters have been set up. UN refugee agency UNHCR says close to 620,000 registered Syrian refugees are currently living in Jordan. Residents of the camp expressed their gratitude and commended the efforts exerted by the authorities.
Thanks God, the situation here is good, and the security agencies provide us with all things we need. May God bless the security agencies and the king, because they already prepared everything and things are good. During this storm we did not need, for example, for someone to come and help us, because we already prepared.
Foreign Minister Nasser Jude called the fight against extremism a third world war and said Jordan would lead the Muslim Arab portion of the coalition that has formed to combat it. His remarks came during a joint press meeting with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in Washington, and just weeks after the Daesh terrorist group confirmed it had killed Jordanian pilot Ma'ad al-Kasasbeh. Kerry praised Jordan's commitment to defeating the terrorists and expressed his and the American people's outrage at the savage killing. Earlier in the week, Jude had participated in a White House summit on extremism.
Our war. This is a war that has to have a Muslim Arab stand, but without the support of our international friends, our partners in the coalition, we cannot do it and we cannot eradicate this evil. It is truly a third world war by other means. You have over 90 nationalities fighting along these sick, warp-minded terrorists, and you have over 65 countries as part of a coalition. All of us are being threatened by these people, all our countries, all our individuals, and I think it takes the collective effort of all of us to defeat them, and we shall prevail. So thank you very much for your support, thank you very much for your friendship, and long may this true partnership live. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Dozens of Palestinian protesters clashed with Israeli security forces near the main gate of Shahada Street in the West Bank city of Hebron. Protesters chanted against the Israeli closure of Hebron's main street and held Palestinian flags and signs reading "Open Shahada Street." Israeli security forces responded with using dispersal means towards the demonstration, while Palestinians ran to cover gas grenades with snow that had covered the place after a stormy night in the city. Shahada Street was the main road and central market for the city of Hebron, and Israeli authorities closed it in 1994. Over to Libya, 3 car bombs ripped through the eastern Libyan city of Quba, killing 40 people and wounding 70 in what officials described as a revenge attack for Egyptian airstrikes on Daesh targets. On Monday, Egypt's Air Force bombed suspected terrorist targets in Derna, a day after the group issued a video showing the execution of 21 Egyptian Coptic Christian workers. The terrorist group took responsibility for the suicide attacks, according to a statement posted on social media. An intensive round of talks over Tehran's disputed nuclear program kicked off in Geneva today. Iranian head negotiator Abbas Araghchi arrived to hold bilateral meetings with the American delegation headed by U.S. negotiator Wendy Sherman. The talks are set to last 2 days before U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his Iranian counterpart join discussions on Sunday and Monday. The talks aim at forming an agreement that would curb Iran's nuclear program in exchange for relief from economic sanctions and to end a 12-year standoff with 6 major powers. The meeting comes 6 weeks from the already postponed self-imposed deadline to reach a deal. The United States and its allies fear that Iran's nuclear program could be used to develop a nuclear bomb. However, Iran denies having nuclear weapon ambitions. The chairman of Eurozone finance ministers expressed optimism that a solution for continued Eurozone financing for Greece in exchange for reforms could be found. The chairman made the statement after a round of initial talks with the Greek and German finance ministers, as well as the head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, ahead of a meeting of all Eurozone ministers. Greece's Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras also was confident that the Eurozone finance ministers would accept Athens' request for an extended loan. Here's more.
Greece. Eurozone finance ministers meeting in Brussels are hoping to break a deadlock over the country's bailout, which is due to expire in just over a week. Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis.
I most certainly hope that there is going to be an agreement, and I trust that we are going to have one. The Greek government has gone not the extra mile, the extra 10 miles, and now we're expecting our partners to meet us.
Greece had proposed a 6-month loan extension, but it's been dismissed by Germany, who says it fails to meet the terms of the bailout programme. As the biggest creditor and EU paymaster, Germany has the clout to block a deal and cast Greece adrift without a lifeline. Without an extension to its bailout, Athens could run out of money within weeks, and European investors were feeling jittery. The euro was down against the dollar for a 3rd day, and Germany's DAX opened modestly lower. Bader Bank's Robert Halver.
Markets are nervous. I'm curious as to who will enforce their demands, the Greeks or the Germans. It will be a long meeting, and I think markets will already be closed by the time there's a solution, if there's a solution, because he who blinks loses first.
Concerns are also growing over whether Greek banks can survive a surge in cash withdrawals. Deposit outflows have accelerated to over €1 billion over the past 2 days, returning to some of the highest levels seen this year. And the ECB has only modestly increased emergency funding for Greek banks. Vicky Price from the Centre of Business and Economic Research.
people are now talking about possible capital controls and moving perhaps towards the position that we've seen in Cyprus, where there is also a limit, or there was a limit for a while anyway, of how much you can withdraw every day from your bank. Well, the Greeks aren't going to like that, obviously, and there is a lot of evidence of cash withdrawal, not just moving money out of the country, but actually just cash withdrawal and people keeping it under the mattress.
Officials are playing down talk that today's meeting is make or break for Greece. If it again ends in stalemate, yet another summit could be on the cards.
The Ukrainian capital Kyiv marked the first anniversary of clashes between protesters and police which toppled ex-president Viktor Yanukovych. More than 100 people died a year ago in the violence on the Maidan, Kyiv's central Independence Square. People were lighting candles and laying flowers in honor of the so-called Heavenly Hundred and demanded a pact with the EU. Meanwhile, renewed fighting between the pro-Russian separatists and government forces was reported in eastern Ukraine a day after separatist forces captured a strategic rail junction following an offensive launched in defiance of a ceasefire that came into force last weekend. The 87th Academy Awards promises to be an elegant affair with glamorous celebrities, fashionable attire and priceless jewelry paraded down the red carpet at the Dolby Theatre. Even the envelopes bearing the winners' names have their very own stylists. Designed by Mark Friedland, the envelopes are handcrafted from high-gloss metallic gold paper with a red lacquered lining featuring the Oscar statue hand-stamped in satin gold leaf. Each set is kept in an undisclosed location before their arrival on Oscar night. The designer says the envelopes are not just functional, but also designed to be keepsakes for the winners. The biggest night in Hollywood will take place on Sunday, February 22nd. World number 1 Rafael Nadal claimed a straight-set victory over Pablo Carreno Busta to advance to the quarterfinals of the ATP Rio Open. Top seed Nadal went down a game in the first set to fellow Spaniard, but broke back to even in the opening set 3-3 and then eased to a 7-5, 6-3 win. From tennis, we move on to soccer, but away from the field and to a bit of controversy. Chelsea have issued a strongly worded apology to the black man who was racially abused by their fans before Tuesday's Champions League match at Paris Saint-Germain. Video footage showed a man being prevented from boarding a metro train by Chelsea supporters chanting racist comments. Chelsea's head of communications said the team had been cooperating fully with the London and Paris police in their ongoing investigation and would continue to do so since they are proud of their diversity. Chelsea have suspended 3 people from their Stamford Bridge Stadium, but police said no arrests were made.
Stand for the values of this club, and they have no place at this club. This has been echoed loud and clear by the vast majority of Chelsea supporters.
And finally, the cold front continues tonight, accompanied with thundery rain and snow, especially in the southern highlands. Gusty northwesterly winds will affect most regions. However, snowfall is expected to taper off in the late night hours. Tomorrow, extreme cold conditions and scattered showers are expected, but light snow may continue in the hilly areas. In the evening hours, icy conditions are foreseen in most parts of the country, while winds will be northwesterly moderate. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect chilly and cloudy conditions with a chance for light showers accompanied by thunder, northerly gusty winds and choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. Highways and major roads across the kingdom are reopened after being blocked by snow that caused traffic havoc and disruption, and more snowfall is expected overnight. The foreign minister calls the fight against extremism a third world war and says Jordan will lead the Muslim Arab portion of the coalition that has formed to combat it. And intensive rounds of talks over Tehran's disputed nuclear program kicked off in Geneva today. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.